Welcome to a time before limits existed. These trucks weren't built to be efficient. They were built to dominate. No computers, no mercy, just iron. Decades later, they still outwork machines made today. This isn't nostalgia, it's humiliation. Number 1. Kenworth W900A, 1965 to 1982. When people imagine a real American semi from the 1970s, the shape that appears in their mind is almost always the Kenworth W900A. Long hood, tall stance, square shoulders, and a presence that made even empty trailers look heavy. The W900A wasn't just a truck, it became a standard by which other conventionals were judged throughout the decade. What made the W900A special in the 1970s was not raw speed or flashy innovation. It was the balance between strength, simplicity, and longevity. These trucks were built during a time when manufacturers expected engines to be rebuilt, frames to be reused, and trucks to remain in service for decades. The W900A fit perfectly into that philosophy. Owners didn't treat it as disposable equipment. They treated it like a working partner. When something wore out, you fixed it. When an engine got tired, you rebuilt it. The truck itself was meant to survive those cycles. Modern trucks often win on paper: better fuel economy, quieter cabs, cleaner emissions. But in the real world, those advantages can disappear the moment something electronic fails or a sensor throws the truck into derate mode. A W900A doesn't care about that world. It comes from a time when reliability meant mechanical honesty. You could hear problems, you could feel them. A skilled driver or mechanic didn't need a laptop to understand what the truck was saying. That's how the W900A humiliates modern machines. Not by being newer, not by being more efficient, but by being predictable and fixable. In harsh conditions, remote routes, rough roads, inconsistent fuel quality, extreme weather, this kind of truck keeps earning money while a newer rig waits for parts or authorization. There's also a cultural factor. The W900A became iconic because drivers trusted it. It wasn't a fleet-only tool. Owner-operators embraced it, customized it, and stayed with it. That kind of loyalty doesn't come from marketing. It comes from experience. Years of hard miles without betrayal. In the 1970s, trucking was less automated, less regulated, and more dependent on human skill. The W900A fit that world perfectly. It didn't shield you from the job, it gave you a machine strong enough to face it with you. That's why, even today, a restored or still working W900A can stand next to a modern tractor and make it look temporary. One feels like a product, the other feels like an institution. Number 2. Peterbilt 359 1967 to 08 1987. The Peterbilt F89 didn't just move freight in the 1970s. It defined what a long-haul semi should look like. Long hood, classic proportions, and a road presence that made people turn their heads. But the real reason the F89 earned legendary status had nothing to do with chrome. It earned that reputation by surviving. During the 1970s, many trucks were still expected to live long lives. Fleets didn't always rotate equipment every few years. Owner-operators often bought a truck with the intention of keeping it for a decade or more. The F89 was built for that world. Its design encouraged rebuilding rather than replacement. Engines, transmissions, and driveline components were treated as service items, not expiration dates. Modern semis often operate under a different economic logic. They are optimized for lease cycles, warranty periods, and regulated emissions lifespans. They are impressive machines, but they are also deeply dependent on systems that the driver cannot touch or diagnose alone. When something goes wrong, the truck may still look fine, but it becomes unusable. A 1970s Peterbilt F89 doesn't care about that. Its humiliation of modern trucks is philosophical. It represents a time when the truck was expected to endure. When a problem appeared, it was addressed with tools and experience, not software authorization. The truck didn't lock you out of your own livelihood. There is also a psychological dimension. Drivers trusted these machines. They felt connected to them. The F89 wasn't just transportation, it was identity. That emotional bond came from reliability. A driver who spends weeks on the road develops a deep relationship with a machine that never leaves him stranded. In difficult terrain, in extreme weather, and in long grinding hauls, the F89 earned its place. It didn't need to be smart, it needed to be strong, and it was. That's why the F89 still stands tall today. Not because it's faster or cleaner than modern trucks, but because it embodies a kind of permanence. Park one next to a modern aerodynamic tractor, and you can almost see the difference in philosophy. One is built to serve for a cycle, the other was built to serve for a lifetime. Number 3. Mack Super-Liner, 1977 to 1993. The Mack Super-Liner arrived at the end of the 1970s with a personality that felt carved from steel. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't trying to be sleek. It looked like a machine meant to work in environments that punished weakness. In an era when trucking still demanded raw toughness, the Super-Liner stood out as a truck that made no excuses. What separates the Super-Liner from many modern machines is its mindset. It was designed when heavy trucks were still treated like industrial tools. The goal wasn't to impress with technology, it was to survive abuse. Thick frames, robust components, and a layout that prioritized strength over style defined this truck. Modern semis are masterpieces of optimization. They are lighter, more aerodynamic, and more efficient, but they can also be more fragile in a systemic way. A single failure can ripple across interconnected systems. The Super-Liner comes from a simpler world. A failure is a failure, mechanical, visible, understandable. You don't need permission from software to continue working. That is where the humiliation lies. In harsh conditions, remote routes, construction work, extreme climates, the Super-Liner era philosophy shines. The truck doesn't ask for perfect conditions. It asks for fuel, maintenance, and a driver willing to work. In return, it keeps moving. Mack's brand has always leaned into durability, and the Super-Liner is one of the purest expressions of that identity. It doesn't try to hide what it is. It is heavy, it is bold, and it is stubborn. In the 1970s, trucking still required a degree of toughness from both machine and operator. The Super-Liner matched that world. It didn't soften the job, it met it head-on. That is why, decades later, these trucks still command respect. They remind people that trucking was once about endurance first, comfort second. Number 4. Freightliner FLC 120, 1977 to 1987. Not every legend is loud. Some legends simply work. The Freightliner FLC 120 represents the kind of 1970s semi that rarely starred in movies but carried an enormous share of real freight. It was built for long-haul service, fleet use, and constant operation. It didn't exist to impress. It existed to perform. In the 1970s, uptime mattered more than image. Fleets needed trucks that could run continuously, be serviced easily, and return to the road without drama. The FLC 120 fit that role perfectly. It embodied the practical side of trucking: durability, consistency, and predictable behavior. Modern trucks often aim for peak efficiency in ideal conditions. The problem is that trucking rarely happens in ideal conditions. Weather changes, roads degrade, schedules slip, maintenance isn't always perfect. In that messy reality, older designs like the FLC 120 often shine. They are forgiving, they tolerate wear, they don't panic when something is slightly off. The humiliation comes from contrast. A modern truck may be brilliant when everything is perfect, but when something small fails, it can become completely unusable. A 1970s Freightliner conventional often keeps going. Maybe it's louder, maybe it rides rougher, but it moves freight. That matters in the real world. A truck that is 90% efficient but runs every day beats a truck that is 100% efficient when it runs but stops too often. The FLC 120 represents the working class side of trucking. It wasn't about identity, it was about function. And in that function-first world, it often outperformed more complex machines simply by refusing to quit. Number 5. International Transtar 4200 and 4300, 1971 to 1985. International's Transtar conventionals of the early 1970s were built for a world where trucks were treated like heavy machinery, not disposable appliances. The 4200 and 4300 models became familiar sights across highways, job sites, and regional routes. They were everywhere because they worked. These trucks came from an era when manufacturers expected their products to be used hard. Fleets didn't baby them. Drivers didn't expect perfection. What they expected was consistency. The Transtar delivered that. The humiliation of modern trucks here is subtle but powerful. Today, a semi is often part of a complex logistical system. It depends on software, sensors, and tightly controlled operating parameters. When something falls outside those limits, the truck may refuse to cooperate. A 1970s Transtar doesn't care. It assumes the world is imperfect. It assumes the road is rough. It assumes the load is heavy, and it's built accordingly. That mindset shows in how these trucks aged. Many of them stayed in service long after newer models replaced them on paper. They became farm trucks, construction haulers, regional workhorses. They adapted. They kept working. The Transtar represents a philosophy that feels rare today. Build a machine that expects abuse. Build it so that repair is normal. Build it so that ownership is a long relationship, not a short contract. In that sense, the Transtar humiliates modern machines, not by outperforming them, but by outlasting them. It reminds us that the true measure of a truck isn't how advanced it is on day one. It's how useful it still is 20 years later. Number 6. White Road Boss. 1973 to 1981. The White Road Boss never chased fame. It never tried to be flashy. It existed for one reason: to work. And that is exactly why it belongs among the 1970s semis that still embarrass modern machines. White Motor Company built the Road Boss during a period when heavy trucks were designed with an industrial mindset. These weren't consumer products dressed up as machines. They were machines first. The Road Boss reflected that philosophy in every way. It had a square, purposeful stance, a no-nonsense cab, and a layout that made sense to mechanics who had to keep trucks alive in the real world. In the 1970s, trucking meant exposure to rough roads, extreme temperatures, inconsistent maintenance schedules, and long hours. A truck had to tolerate abuse. The Road Boss did. It didn't demand perfect conditions. It didn't rely on delicate systems. It was built to endure. Modern semis often operate within narrow tolerances. They are optimized, efficient, and intelligent, but also sensitive. A sensor issue, a software fault, or an emissions-related derate can shut a truck down completely. In that moment, all the sophistication becomes a liability. A Road Boss doesn't understand limp mode. It understands work. That is the humiliation. When conditions are harsh, simplicity becomes strength. The Road Boss era of design accepted that breakdowns happen and built trucks that could be fixed and returned to service quickly. The truck was part of a working ecosystem, not a sealed device. Another advantage of these old white trucks was their adaptability. Many Road Boss units lived multiple lives: long haul in their youth, regional work later, farm hauling or construction duty after that. They aged into new roles rather than being discarded. That kind of life cycle is rare today. Many modern trucks are economically done, long before their physical structures are worn out. The Road Boss represents a time when a truck's usefulness wasn't defined by software compatibility or regulatory cycles. It was defined by whether it could still move weight. In a world where uptime is everything, a truck that keeps going through imperfection is a weapon. The White Road Boss didn't need praise. It earned respect by refusing to fail quietly. Number 7. Ford LTL 9000. Introduced 1976. When Ford introduced the LTL 9000 in the mid-1970s, it wasn't experimenting, it was declaring war in the long-haul Class 8 arena. This truck was built to compete directly with the giants of American trucking: Kenworth, Peterbilt, Mack, and Freightliner. The LTL 9000 came from Ford's L-Series family, but it was clearly positioned as a serious highway tractor. It wasn't a medium-duty compromise. It was a true big rig, designed to live on interstates and survive brutal schedules. In the 1970s, competition was fierce. Fleets chose trucks based on reliability, parts availability, and total lifetime value. A truck that couldn't earn trust didn't survive. The LTL 9000 earned a place because it could do the job. The humiliation of modern trucks comes from what this Ford represents: a time when manufacturers built heavy equipment with longevity as a core assumption. The LTL 9000 wasn't expected to be obsolete in a few years. It was expected to serve. Modern semis often feel like highly advanced devices. They are brilliant, but also temporary. Their complexity can shorten their economic lifespan. A 1970s Ford LTL 9000, by contrast, belongs to a world where a truck's value increased with familiarity. Drivers learned its sounds. Mechanics learned its habits. Fleets built strategies around its behavior. That human-machine relationship is disappearing. Today, the truck often tells the driver what it will allow. In the 1970s, the driver told the truck what needed to be done. The LTL 9000 reminds us that a heavy truck is more than transportation. It's a tool of independence. It gives its operator power over distance and time. When a truck becomes too complex, that power shifts away from the driver. That's why the LTL 9000 still resonates. It stands for a period when a semi was not just advanced, it was understandable. And in trucking, understanding is strength. Number 8. GMC General, 1977 to 1987. The GMC General arrived in 1977 as one of the largest and most serious heavy trucks General Motors ever built. It wasn't a derivative. It wasn't an experiment. It was GM stepping fully into the Class 8 battlefield. The General's size alone told you everything. This was a truck meant for weight. It had the stance of industrial machinery. It looked like it belonged in quarries, on mountain passes, and in long-haul convoys. What makes the GMC General special in the context of humiliation is timing. It represents the end of an era. It came from a world where heavy trucks were still designed primarily as mechanical systems. After this period, the industry increasingly shifted toward complexity, regulation-driven design, and faster turnover. The General belongs to the last generation of trucks that assumed they would be rebuilt, not replaced. Modern semis are impressive, but they are also tied tightly to software ecosystems and regulatory frameworks. Their life cycles are often dictated by external systems. A 1977's GMC General answers to none of that. It exists purely to work. When something fails on a General, it fails in a way you can see, hear, or feel. It doesn't hide behind code. That transparency is powerful. It means the driver and mechanic remain in control. The humiliation comes when a modern truck is sidelined by something invisible, while an old General keeps rolling because nothing has physically broken. One looks advanced, the other looks unstoppable. The GMC General also symbolizes something emotional: pride. Drivers who ran these trucks felt like they were piloting something serious, not a tool, an instrument of power. That psychological edge matters. A driver who trusts his machine drives differently. He commits. He pushes. He believes the truck will carry him through. The General earned that belief. Number 9. Mack R Model, 1966 to 2005. The Mack R Model is one of the longest-running truck platforms in heavy-duty history. That alone tells you everything. No manufacturer keeps a design alive for decades unless it works. In the 1970s, the R Model was everywhere. Highways, construction zones, regional roads. It wasn't specialized. It was universal. It adapted to whatever the job demanded. The humiliation of modern machines is rooted in that adaptability. Today, trucks are often highly optimized for specific roles. That optimization can become fragility. The Mack R Model was built for reality, not theory. It could haul freight. It could dump. It could pull heavy equipment. It could do all of it without changing its fundamental identity. It was a platform, not a product. Mack's reputation for toughness is not marketing, it is history. The R Model earned that bulldog emblem by surviving abuse. In the 1970s, severe service wasn't a niche, it was normal. Modern trucks may be more comfortable, quieter, and more efficient, but many cannot tolerate the same level of punishment. They require ideal conditions. The R Model expects the opposite. That is humiliation in its purest form. When an older machine performs in environments that overwhelm a newer one, the R Model also symbolizes continuity. Drivers knew it, mechanics knew it, fleets built systems around it. That ecosystem created resilience. Today, trucking is faster, smarter, and cleaner, but also more fragile. The Mack R Model stands as proof that durability itself is a form of intelligence. Number 10. Volvo F89. Introduced 1971. While American trucking celebrated long noses and chrome, Europe faced a different reality: tighter roads, stricter length limits, and dense international routes. The Volvo F89 emerged in this world as a top-tier heavy truck built for serious long-distance work. Introduced in 1971, the F89 became a symbol of European long-haul strength during the 1970s. It wasn't decorative, it was purposeful. Its cab-over design wasn't a compromise, it was a solution. What makes the F89 humiliating to modern machines is its balance of durability and endurance. European routes demand consistency. Mountains, borders, weather changes, and endless miles punish weak designs. The F89 thrived there. Modern trucks often rely on complex systems to maintain performance. The F89 relied on engineering and robustness. It didn't ask for perfection. It expected resistance. In a way, the F89 proves that the 1970s philosophy wasn't limited to America. Across the world, heavy trucks were built to survive. They were expected to live hard lives. The F89 represents that global mindset. It shows that real strength doesn't come from technology alone. It comes from understanding the environment and building accordingly. Modern trucks may be smarter, but in many ways they are less brave. They protect themselves. The F89 trusted itself. That trust is the essence of old iron. And that is why, even today, a 1970s Volvo F89 can stand beside a modern tractor and remind us what durability truly looks like. These trucks didn't age. The world around them did. While modern machines failed, these kept moving. They proved one brutal truth. Real strength never becomes obsolete. Legends don't upgrade. They endure.